Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I'm Lydia from the Straits Times. I'd like to ask the candidates, what are your thoughts on the desire among some Singaporeans for more political choice? Do you think Singapore can afford to have a two-party system of government? And if not, why not?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I mentioned this earlier. I feel that as a small state, vulnerable state, it is much better for us to have one strong government with a strong mandate from the people. And if you look at developed countries, whether Japan, whether US, their political inclination is much wider because they are urban population, they are also rural population. So from the east to the west of the America, you can find very different concerns that the people have. And so, but you zoom down into specific cities or even states, Illinois, Utah, or New York or London, you find that those diversity and inclination then narrows down. And it's not difficult to find certain states, certain cities where the population supports a party, whether Republican or Democrat, whether Tory or Labour, for a significant long period of time. And so for Singapore, we have to look at it in that context. Ours is urban politics. And I feel that we need one strong majority government with strong support from the people. Then we can move decisively in this uncertain world. It is the only advantage we have. Today, I feel that's PAP. If many, many years down the line, somehow PAP is no longer good, it becomes corrupt, it can no longer bring in talent, then by all means, let's have an opposition that can have the right talent and lead Singapore decisively in a new direction. But as of today, in 2011, that party is PAP and I support it fully.
This one? You want to have it?
I think within that strong government, it does not mean that the government doesn't listen to the people. Each one of us seated here today and many of our colleagues, we reach out to people all the time. Doesn't mean that all of us, we reach out to different people, we hear different things, and we speak quite frankly among ourselves, saying that we debate through issues, and you see that quite frequently in Parliament. Of course, people say that now, should we have different voices? But I think a lot of time when they meant different voices, they meant opposition voices. Now, I think voices are as important as the fact that they reflect the sentiments of the people and they lead to insightful and meaningful discussions. I think what we have now, the policies that we have, that has worked for us, is a product of very good, insightful conversations that we had with our parliamentarians. If not, you would not have been able to get that type of policies here, that kind of progress that we had. And I echo Yigang in the fact that you do need a very strong government and able to be nimble, to steer our country in the direction where it's most beneficial to the people. And if the day comes when we're ineffective, and the day comes when the PAP government cannot be trusted anymore, then yes, we might have that situation. But as long as we bring good people to the slate, we continue to listen to the people, make sure that inputs are captured, make sure that the policies reflect what you want, then yes, our government will continue to be strong, and then we have a strong Singapore. Thank you.
So, I'm not sure this is the right place to be asking that question, because, it's the job of the PAP to be elected as often as possible and get as many of its candidates in Parliament as possible. And whether or not Singaporeans have a choice and whether there's a viable two-party system depends on what else is put up for the Singaporeans to choose from. I read probably from your newspaper that there's going to be a contest in every ward. So the Singaporeans will have the choice. But what it comes down to is whether people are opposing for the sake of opposing or whether they're choosing good candidates to give Singaporeans a viable choice.
Hi, I'm Kenny from my paper. This is really a question for Desmond. Being a rather young candidate, you could be potentially facing very, senior opposition. What do you think? How do you think you can stand up to the competition, given your youth?
Well, that's the benefit of youth, isn't it, huh? Well, to me, first and foremost, competition aside, there's never really been a key thought when I served the people. When we served, either as a second advisor in my current capacity or eventually become a member of parliament. Now, getting past the gates is just that one moment. The key thing is whether are you really serving the people? And that's what I'm here to do, is here to serve. Whether is it a more senior competition or a more junior one, that doesn't really matter. That hasn't distracted me from my principle and philosophy, which is to help the people first, to serve first, and the rest will take care of itself. Now, of course, the other question is that I'm too young. I'm 33, but public service has been in my blood. I came back from my study in 2001. I've served for 9 years in the civil service. I've been in the grassroots movement. I've seen my fair share of poverty and tough times in my own personal history. If I'm not convinced that I have what it takes to serve my people, then I would not have put myself forward as a possible candidate. Thank you.
Maybe I'll take the last question from Cassandra, then I'll round up.
Okay, I have actually two questions for Dr. Janil. One is when your dad was among the group that left the PAP a long time ago, they disagreed on things such as detention without trial, freedoms of speech, assembly and organization. So what are your views on those issues, and what are your thoughts on the ISA? So that's one question. The other one is that, you came to Singapore about 10 years ago and you only became a citizen in 2008. So there are some questions like what makes you Singaporean enough to represent us? Yeah.
I'll take your second question first. Simplistically, why did I become a Singaporean citizen in 2008 is I was worried what my parents might think about it, and I should not have worried anywhere near as much when I spoke to them about it. But I think the important point is that, we all need to be proud of where we've come from. We are all proud of where we've come from, of our ancestry, our cultural background, our history. But one of the defining things about Singapore is that it is in spite of and despite our differences, we define ourselves by where we're going. We define ourselves by looking ahead. And so, the question is not where we come from. The question is who is going to be prepared to stay and fight and make this country what it will be, what it can be. I'm that person. I'm staying, I'm fighting, I'm fully invested. So your first question really is, do I agree with these policies? Well, it's a hard question for me to answer. My dad was detained under ISA and the law is still there, but the way that law has been used is very different now. And the potential uses for that law in this era, after 9/11, after various other things, is very different. So I might philosophically argue with some aspects of policy, but the philosophy is not important as the pragmatic implications for our state, for our security, for our country. This is a much wider debate that I think can't be thrown away in a soundbite, but I will certainly have views, and I'm very willing to take those views on within the party for discussion.
Well, I'm sure you all have many more questions, but let me wrap up, and then you can sort of follow up with each of them later on if you wish to do so. Some of you have asked me questions about the general election and the opposition and what message we have for the voters. Basically, during a general elections, there's always a lot of bustle, there's a lot of excitement, various kinds of issues get raised, and emotions also get raised. But we should also remember to focus on the long term, because the elections is not about what happens within that 10 days or 2 weeks when the elections are being held, or that 1 or 2 or 3 months before that when there's suddenly a lot of this bustle on the ground, particularly from members of the media and also people who are in the opposition who turn up suddenly in various constituencies to try and smell the ground. What you're really looking for when you vote is to vote for the people and to vote for the party whom you can trust, whom you've been working with for many, many years, and whom you know can deliver for you, for your family, for the country. As we go forward, I see a world which is much more turbulent and much more uncertain. It's a much more interconnected world, and therefore what happens in one part of the world, another part of the world, can affect us quite immediately. You can see how an earthquake or tsunami or a nuclear incident in Japan can impact on us, or what's happening in North Africa and the Middle East, or what's happening in Europe, or the financial crisis in America, how that has impacted on us. So it's going to be a much more turbulent and an uncertain world ahead. And thus far, in Singapore, we have been able to maintain stability, continuity, and almost an oasis of calm in this sea of turbulence and uncertainty. And that's because we have been able to remain united, we've been able to take a long-term view on policies, we've been able to put aside things in good times for rainy days. And when we face a crisis, we've been able to bring ourselves together, face the crisis together, and overcome it, as we have done in the recent economic crisis. So these are strong points of Singapore, which we should value, which we should treasure, and which we should build upon for the future. And a lot of it depends on the people who will be there in Parliament, on the people who will be for office holders for the future, that fourth generation of leadership for Singapore. So for this election, we have selected our candidates carefully, more carefully than any other party has. And in the end, it depends on the people, the quality of the people, whether they're capable, whether they're committed, whether you can put your trust in them. And I have confidence that Singaporeans will look at the people that we have, size them up, and that they will give, Singaporeans will give our candidates and the party their support so that we can continue to work together for that future, that better future, which we all want. So thank you very much.